One of the things that I'm going to answer your question. By saying this first, one of the things that I learned as a young child growing up was, as you begin to experience the world around you, and you're told a set of rules in your own house, and then you hear about a set of rules from your school or other people, and you begin to see and feel, you can't articulate it because you're too young, but you have an understanding that there's something different. And if as a child I had the language to say that there's two parallel universes, I would have said that. I just knew that, I found myself always questioning and thinking, I have this rule at home, I have this rule at school. I used to always be a person about fairness. I remember always going to my dad about what's fair and what's not fair. And because I noticed these contradictions. And there were times in my life where I would, even though I was raised in a very Japanese household, there would come times in my life when the contradictions were just too overwhelming, and I felt that I needed to make a statement about it, and when I would think to do those things, I would think, okay, I'm not going to live to see my 13th birthday. I'm going to die today. Either that or I'm going to be disowned and I'm going to be homeless. I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. And I think what it did is it eventually would probably give me the courage because I was finding my own voice. And I think in finding my own voice, I think my parents set me up to find my own voice. I used to have conversations with my mother like, well, why would you, it was almost as if I was saying, why did you teach us in this manner so then when we do find our voice, it's not consistent with gaman. Gaman is, right? Gaman is to, and yet, if you're going to teach me to be proud of myself and be, right? At some point, I'm going to use my voice, and that is not gaman. And so here I am at about 12, and and I decide that I'm tired of doing housework and washing clothes and ironing and putting the clothes into drawers, into everybody's drawers. So whoever stayed home and off the farm had to wash clothes, mop the floors, do the dishes, get the dinner ready. When you wash the clothes, you got to hang them up on a line because there's no such thing as a dryer. And then you got to iron them and fold them and put them away. And we lived in this house that was upstairs and downstairs. And I remember piling all my brother's shirts to go down into their drawers. And they decided that they didn't want to go put it in their drawers. They were too busy doing what they were doing. So my mom said to me something like, well, why didn't you put your brother's clothes in their drawers? And I said, well, I folded them really nice so that they can take them downstairs with them. And and she decided that no, that was part of my job and I needed to go and take them downstairs. So I decided to throw a fit. So I picked up the clothes and I threw them all down the stairs. So the downstairs went like this, and clothes is just flying down the stairs. All my beautiful iron shirts and whatevers are all flying down. There's my one younger, my other brother flying, and I'm thinking, okay, that felt really good, but you're gonna die. You're not gonna live to see 13 because Dad's gonna come home and, oh gosh, you just did a big no-no. So my mother was like, okay. I knew it was wait till your father comes home. So here comes my dad, right? And I could hear them talking in the kitchen. And this is when you need to know language because your parents are doing it in Japanese. And I could hear him, and she's telling him, and she's just throwing the clothes all over the place. And so I hear my dad say, I think it's time for the boys to put their own clothes away. You can't, you're going from death to, you know what I'm saying? It's like you've just been pardoned. Never in my life would I have ever thought that I would be pardoned. I don't know what I expected, but I did not expect that for my father to say, it's time for the boys to put their own clothes away. And so I said to myself, so there are things that you can draw a line, right? And have a case for it. But I didn't need to throw the clothes down the stairs. Maybe I could have had a dialogue with my mother about it, but it didn't, that didn't materialize. So from that point, I knew that yeah, you could find a resolve, and that you could still follow some of those cultural values, but also find something a little bit more just in that narrative about doing housework and washing clothes. Yeah. I think one of the things throughout my life that that helped me, I don't know if that's a part of my personality to begin with, or if it's something that because we were taught to be silent and to, as a young child, what it does when you're not speaking, it causes you either to daydream or focus somewhere else, or you focus and you start listening to people around you. And maybe as a child, because I was always listening to what adults were saying, I wanted to know what they were saying. And I started to use listening, using that quiet time to listen to what people were saying, to listen to other people's stories. So you started, at least for me, I started to know who someone was, whether they were all my classmates or the people on the bus going to school, or the people in my class, or standing outside the classroom, or listening to my colleagues. One of the things I began to understand is you begin to understand the environment that you're living in, whether you're living there at work, or whether you're living there as friends, or you're living there as a kid in a family. You start to, you have a pretty good understanding of where you are, meaning I understood where I was in my family, because I was just paying attention or asking questions or just listening. And so one of the things when I first started Foothill College as the Asian American Multicultural Student Services Coordinator, Mike Honda and Paul Sakamoto were my community advisory board members. And I remembered going to them one time, talking to them about the students were advocating for and demanding a full-time Asian American counselor on campus. And this was back in the 70s. I'm going to say 73, 74, because I was hired in 73. And one of the things that Paul Sakamoto said to me, and it reminded me of my own upbringing, right? Because he's Japanese American, I'm Japanese American. And he said to me, never feel the need to fill in the space because it's quiet. Let the other ones fill the space. Because in filling that space, they're going to tell you something. And that resonated with me because that was basically what my father was saying to us. And so I learned to, as I negotiated things at the college, as I worked with my colleagues, I mostly was back here. Well, all that's going on over here, right? And then I can go, I could see what the problem is. All right. And then I do this. So it's about that quiet allows you to start developing those listening skills. But it's more than listening skills because you're doing this too. You've got to use all of that, to see what's going on in a situation. So those values I see on the wall in Japantown that my parents brought with them, depending on the situation, most of the times I think my values will hold, but there are times if I'm in a particular situation, I have to look at the context of what's trying to be solved and what needs to take place. And sometimes meaning you, which I'm saying what I do is then I have to figure out a way to to move outside of that in order to get something done. Because in order to get something done, you're going to have to put yourself out there, meaning you're being taught not to put yourself out there. You're being told not to speak up or speak out. And you understand that, again, I understood the context of where I was. I understand that I have to be willing to accept the consequences, because there are consequences when you speak up. And I can give you example after example of when I chose to speak up. And as I got older, my tact changed. When I was younger, you kind of just you're trying to figure your way out, right? You're trying to figure out how much you can push before they push back really hard. So an example would be, I worked in electronics when I was first starting college, and I worked full time. And I worked in electronics because you could work a full shift and still go to school. And so I looked around where I was working. It was all women. It was almost all women of color, and it was all women. And then there was probably a population of Caucasian women, white women from high school. And when I worked in electronics, the companies were just starting. Intel, AMD, they were all chips. Silicon Valley was just starting to grow. It had a different environment in those days in those companies because it was loose and it was young. And the women had to wear white smocks, and we had to wear dresses. And we worked at these long tables like this. And we had these machines that we worked with, and the technicians would come under your table, fixing the wiring underneath. And so you'd stop because you've got a dress on. They're working under the table. So you'd stop, and your supervisor would say, Victoria, why are you stopping? I said, well, Jeff is under the table. And he says, he's looking at you like, so? And you're saying, well, I don't feel comfortable. He can finish doing his work, and then I'll continue my work. And so when the supervisors started to become insensitive about our feelings about men crawling under the table while you're working at your job and fixing machines, and they could be under there a half an hour. And some of the women were older women, and they didn't feel comfortable either. So they kind of came to me and said, would you bring this up at a meeting with our supervisors? Because we heard you tell them that you didn't feel comfortable. Well, we don't feel comfortable. And so I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, here I go. And one of the things when you think about consequence, one of the things, I needed that job. I needed the job so I can go to school. But I also understood that from talking to my coworkers, they needed the job because they were putting their kids to school. They needed the job because that was the only alternative for them. And so I sat there and I said, okay, I'm going to speak up. I could get fired. Some of these young supervisors they might be 3 or 4 years older than me, and they're going to graduate anytime soon for their MBA, and they'll be gone. Or they're working on their bachelor's, they'll be gone. And they also know that I'm going to school. So maybe in that way they treated me different. So when I spoke up, they weren't very happy about it. In fact, one of the supervisors said to me, because all I asked was that we could wear shorts. Can we wear shorts to work instead of dresses and skirts? And they said no, because they wanted us to look presentable when customers came in to see how the chips were being made and the cleanliness of the room and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, but the smocks come down to here, and you won't see anything else. You're just going to see our knees, and we'll still be dressed nicely from the knee down. And one of the supervisors, I'll never forget what he said. He said, we hired you to make chips. We didn't hire you to change the rules. And don't ask me why I did this, but I was so mad because he put in a couple of F words, right? And I thought, okay. And I got up and I left the room, and I went and sat in the bathroom, and I remembered somebody come in and said, "Oh, such and so wants to apologize to you for using bad language. Would you come out so he could?" I said, "No, I'm not going to come out." And I got called into the big supervisor's office, and I would say shortly after that we got to wear pants and shorts. Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about. It's not because I felt like when you find yourselves in those situations, if you don't look at the consequences, I don't know. It didn't feel good, but I understood the people who were coming to me and who were asking me to speak up. And it's because of them I spoke up, not because I was like, I think I'm going to go speak up. But yeah.